Hello, BookTube. It's day 16 of May's for Magazine events. We're halfway there. And today, again, from Chambers Journal of Popular Literature, Science, and Art from Saturday, February 6, 1886. Another unnamed article entitled The Ethics of Housekeeping. The cry is everywhere the same, the badness of our modern servants. But who is really to blame, the mistress or the maids, the masters or the employed? The one class are educated and the other are completely ignorant. And influence filters downwards, it does not permeate the social mass from below. We cast longing looks backwards to the bygone times when servants were the humble friends of the family, ready to serve for love and bare maintenance if bad times came, and identifying themselves with the fortune of their masters. But we forget that we ourselves have changed even more than they. Since the days when mistresses overlooked the maids the maids in closer companionship than is warranted now by the conditions of society, when daily details are ordered by the lady and the execution of her orders was personally supervised, when housekeeping was at once an art and a pleasure, a science and a source of pride. Then young servants were trained immediately under the eye of the mistress and by her direct influence, as now they are trained under the head servant of their special department. And in the change of teachers alone, if no other cause were wanting, we could trace the source of the deterioration complained of. The lady who 2 generations ago taught the still growing maid the mysteries of syrups and condiments, of jams and jellies and dainty sweetmeats, who knew the prime joints and the signs of good meat, tender poultry, and fresh fish, as well as the cook herself, and could go blindfolded to her linen press and pick out the best sheets from the ordinary, and know by place as well as by touch where the fine huckback towels were to be found and where the coarser who could check it, as well as instruct the housemaid in every turn, such a mistress as this, for her own part, diligent, refined, truthful, God-fearing, was likely to give a higher tone, infuse a more faithful and dutiful spirit into the servants than is possible now, when the thing is rendered to the profession like any other, and the teacher is only technically, not morally, in advance of the pupil. It is the mistress who have let the reins slip from their hands, and the maids who have taken the bit between their teeth, or rather, the latter has been the consequence of the former. And we blame our servants for the heartlessness of their service, for the ease with which they want of change, or of bettering themselves to the infinite disturbances of things and trouble to the household. We must remember that we ourselves first broke the golden links, and that we expect devotion without giving affection is to expect simply slavishness. The advantage of the present system of mere professional and skilled technicality is to be found in the greater comfort and regularity of the household, in more finished precision and perfection of the service, in the more complete systemization of the whole art and practice of attendance. But those gains have been brought with a price, not only to the increased cost of housekeeping, but in the deterioration of the moral character of servants, and in the annihilation of the friendly and quasi-family feeling which once existed between the mistress and her domestics. In large cities and in the houses of the rich, the upper men servants are practically their own masters. They make their own stipulations as to hours, food, allowances, liberties, and compound for the nervous exhaustion of perpetual worry, which does not include hard work, by a scale of feeling which is more savage than civilized in the quantity of fresh meat included. They can make the house pleasant or intolerable to the guest, and in a thousand shy, mysterious ways they cause the mistress annoyance and cannot be brought home to them, and of which they enjoy the effect produced. In the kitchen, their cook is absolute mistress, it and holds her lady as merely the subscriber of her own menu for the day, as well as the bank which is drawn the money for the bills, which she pays, and in the payment of those bills, as well as in dealing with remnants of which we betide the mistress, who should recommend the home consumption. The cook doubtless and doubles the cook doubles and trebles her wages and feathers her own nest with the down plucked from her employers. But we wonder at this. We put a we put a half-educated person into a place of trust and temptation. We neither check nor overlook her. We trust all her abstract honesty and sense of justice. There is no danger of discovery, still less of punishment. She has before her the additional temptation of pleasing her fellow servants, with whom she lives in an hourly contact, neither then of rather than of saving the pockets of her rich employers, whom she scarcely knows and rarely sees. And then we lift up our hands to the depravity of human nature when we find that the tradesmen give back a percentage on their bills, and that whole pounds of wax candles swell the perquisites of the grease pot handsomely. But next door, the rich merchant is a fraudulent bankrupt. The respectable family lawyer over the way absconds after having dealt with the client's securities. Master's friends, the banker, puts the shutters up to the ruin of thousands on thousands, while his wife has a secured jointure which enables them to live in princely style. And the stock jobber who dines with us on Sundays makes us of private information and sell to his best friend shares which up uh, to sell to his best friend shares which up to their highest point today he knows will collapse like a balloon tomorrow. Are we not a little hard on the kitchen, seeing what is done in the parlor? Go from the rich to the poor among our gentry, from the gilded upper stratum of the lower base and barren subsoil. And here again we find that mistresses are as much to blame as the maids, whose shortcomings they bewail and resent. In a household of this kind, the res angusta domini prevents the hiring, because rendering impossible the payment of good and well-trained servants, and the mistress has to be content with young girls whom she must teach and whose unwanted services she buys at a small cost. But here again, the modern spirit of the age spoils what else might seem to be returned to the old and wholesome conditions. 9 times out of 10, the mistress is as incapable of teaching as the maid is slow of learning. For we must remember that untrained girls of this sort are generally taken from the most humble classes, and they come into service with but a little natural brightness of wit and less educational sharpening. The mistress expects too much from them. For the most part, nothing under her own burden, disliking her duties, and envying her richer sisters, and does the least she she can in the house, and gives the heavy end of the stick to the hired hired help, and uh, and forgetful of the maxim of line upon line and precept upon precept, and of the necessity of reiteration, patient and continual. If a dull brain has to be impressed with a new method learned, she is impatient and angry when orders are forgotten, ways of going things bungled, and chaos, disorder, and confusion are the result. Perhaps she herself is unpunctual and exact, but she expects from her 17-year-old little Betty the punctuality of the sun and regularity of the clock. Perhaps she herself is undutifully and shirks all that she can transfer to another's hands, but she looks for devotion, self sacrifice, and unfailing performance of her duty from the comparative child, and feels entitled to sit in the seat of judgment when these virtues run dry and the shallow stream of conscientiousness fails. From the nurse girl herself, a mere child hired to wheel the perambulator and look after the children, she expects such patience, forbearance, and understanding of child nature as she herself, mother as she is, cannot command. If Jackie is rude and Jenny is rebellious, if Tommy is unmanageable and Katie is defiant, she, the mother, whose temper would be in a blaze on the moment, demands that the nursemaid shall hear all with a calm and equitable mind, and without the power of punishing, be able to reduce the obedience these little rebels, whom she herself cannot always control with the help of the rod and the dark closet to boot. Furthermore, she lays the blame of these naughty tempers on the girl. To expect the children, they are always good with her, she says angrily, and it must be Mary's fault that they are and often tiresome when she has them. And when she says this and does not remember the old adage about the little pitchers and long ears, and never realizes the fact that by her own words she gives the children their cue and encourages them to be rude to one who they know beforehand will be made the scapegoat for their sins. This overpowering maternal love, the storge of which poets make so much account, and which is the primal necessity of the preservation for the race, is at times the cause of great injustice, especially when dealing with those unprotected young nursemaids to whom no authority can be given, from whom all controlling influences is expected, and who have neither moral force nor mental enlightenment enough to control themselves, still less others. If they stand in the attitude of accusers, the mother rejects them as traitors. Sometimes in a small household, the master interferes like a woman and adds to the confusion by putting his masculine fingers into the already overstocked domestic pie. There are men who are simply maddening in the house. They watch behind the window blind and count the number of seconds Betty gives to the baker's boy, and how she smirks and smiles at the handsome young grocer or the smart Mr. Butcher. That Betty should have many pleasures in the gallant words or flattering looks of one or all of these seems to them a sin and a dereliction of duty, and in some queer way a wrong and a robbery done to them. For were they to be completely candid, most masters and mistresses would say they expect the whole of the servant's nature to be given to them, all her thoughts as well as her abilities, all her interests as well as all her time, and that to fall in love in is a kind of petty treason and a quasi dishonest transfer of energy. Put in this crude way, the theorem would be denied, and the dozen other reasons would be given for the confessed dislike felt by employers for the lovesick maid. Reduced to its elements, it would come to what we have said: impatience of the inevitable troubler of the conditions being one of the proofs on our side. I am in matters of this kind, the Molly man who stays at home, peeps from behind the blind, and puts his finger into the pies aboard is a harsher and less sympathetic person to deal with than the average mistress, to whom the girl's love affairs carry on echo and awakens odd dreams of her own, and gets a little compassion for the sufferer. For after all, Betty's love for the baker's young man is very much the same kind of thing as Ada's for the captain and Mabel's for the curate, and the neither the cut nor the material of this gown influences the beating of the heart which throbs beneath. In all this, we had occasion in a recent paper to observe we do not excuse the futility side of modern servants, but we should like to see inaugurated a better method of dealing with it. We should like to see the mistresses go back to the old friendly feeling and friendly intercourse with those who live under their roof, and make their happiness by the conscientious discharge of duty, and old friendly feeling which made of the household one friendly and brought the servants in line with the masters of the golden cord of human sympathy. People say that this is impossible, but the spirit of the age prevents it, that servants themselves refuse to recognize anything like personal interest from their employers, that the whole tone and character of service are changed, and that it is now only a profession. There, where the employed live under the roof of their employers instead of out of the house, as with mill maids or mill hands, and the like. It may be so, but if even so, we contend that the higher natures could influence the lower if they would. That knowledge could direct ignorance, and that it depends on the masters and the mistress to get good out of those changed conditions. Human nature, on the whole, seeking the light, and society, like the broken crystal, mending its fortunes with fresh material to the maintenance of the form and beauty. Oh, so there ends. I'm losing my voice, actually. The Ethics of Housekeeping. He's quite harsh on, like, he doesn't think well of servants, that they're obviously not very bright. Well, obviously going to be uneducated, but doesn't mean that they can't be smart. But he also does point out the stupidity and not very educated masters and mistresses as well. They do one thing, but they don't expect their servants to mirror what they do. They expect them to be even better. But yeah, no, it's interesting. Anyway, I'll end it there. It's 20 minutes, and I will see you tomorrow for the next one. Bye.